There's all this seafood that have already been previously cut. We do all the cutting ourselves here. We have some whole fish here, all locally caught. Most of it's locally caught. Because of the weather and stuff, the last few days, we don't really have a huge selection, but normally both cases are full. But because of the weather, it's been raining and blowing down here, so the guys haven't been getting out as much as we'd like. We also have clams that are all locally, a few different oysters like you saw earlier this morning, different growers, steamers from here, mussels are from Prince Edward Island.
So, Charlie, how often do you get deliveries?
My shop, we get delivered every day. Pretty much every day we have different baymen coming in. As it's getting winter now, we'll buy from the bigger boats in Shinnecock, some stuff out of Boston and New Bedford. But mainly in the summertime, I have about 15 guys that bring fish every day. So basically, my whole day.
And I think we lost Charlie's sound.
Whoop. Hold on, guys. Tell them to stop. They lost Charlie's sound.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me again?
We can.
All right. So yeah, so basically we buy from a whole different variety of different guys. We do get fish from different wholesalers. I do buy out of New York City. I also buy out of Boston. We buy some stuff from down south. So everything's shipped in or locally harvested. I try to do as much local harvest as I can because that way we can definitely have the quality fish here that we like. My fishermen know what I want, so they know to have ice to make sure the fish are kept ice. They know most of my guys will bleed the fish, which makes it a nicer fish to eat. It's not as fishy, when you can bleed them. And so from there, it goes right down the chain. We do the same thing in the city. We buy from different fish, different houses, and they know not to give us the stuff that we don't want.
So, what are some of the things that you look for as you have fresh fish coming in? And if any of our participants have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you might have as well.
You want to see it beautiful. You want it to look fresh. You don't want it to look old. You don't want it to look drawn out. That's where like ice is really important. Bleeding is really important. If the fish looks like it's been sitting around in the sun or something, I won't buy it. We have so many other different guys we can buy from and stuff. So I'll definitely pass a guy up if I can, if I know a different guy is going to have something nicer.
And what are are there any food handling processes that you have to follow per USDA?
Yeah, we have to do a HACCP. We do a hands-on training for New York. We do a food prep course also through New York. So we have to have whole different licenses. We got to have the DEC license. So yeah, we do have a number of different steps we got to follow, and that's just to protect the consumer. Double check us and protect everybody. So we don't want bad stuff going out or somebody actually getting sick or nothing like that. So we're very conscious of how things are processed. You're not putting things where they shouldn't be. So it's a lengthy sheet that we have to go through every day, but we do it every day regardless.
And so, how do your decisions and consumer decisions impact environmental and sustainability of seafood overall?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff on the internet that tells you what's good to buy and what's not. Certain things I don't agree with. I believe New York is one of the leaders in conservation. We are the stingiest. We get the least amount of quotas. So they are protecting the fisheries that way. So, basically if New York says we can catch it, I kind of feel very confident with it. You know, as being my father and my grandfather are both fishermen, so I grew up since I was a little kid sleeping in the fish tote. So the thing is, like, a fisherman never wants to put himself out of business, and that's the one thing people have to understand. If they can't make money at it, they're not going to catch it. So we never fish things like overseas do. Like, we never going to outfish something where we can't catch it again, because we want it to come back. So that's why New York is so stringent on their regulations. And then when they see the mass going up, they'll give us a little bit more fish to catch, which is a great thing. So, and then, we do also buy from other states, which is nice. But for the most part, we have the most coastline down here, and we have the least amount of we have the most regulations, and we catch the least amount of fish to other states.
Is it, any of our participants, do you have any questions for Charlie? Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah. Hi there, Charlie. My name's Kat Reeder. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
So growing up, I used to do the charter boats in Captree with my dad, and we would do fluke and flounder
Yep.
fishing. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate what you do, because I have been on those sea tides, and growing up and it gets pretty rough, I feel like, on the coast of Long Island doing that. So I just wanted
Yep.
to say great job for doing
And
that.
you got to see when it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed, but there's still fish to be had, so that's good.
Yep. So just wanted to add that I have done that. So.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
So as we're looking at, and thank you, Kat, so as we're looking at these different forms around you, what different forms do you sell as far as fillets and other things like that? Can you share that with us?
Yeah. Growing up, I've been doing this for 35 years. So growing up, when I first started here, the mothers or grandmothers would come in, and they'd always buy the fish whole. The heads went for soup. Then they'd eat the whole fish with the bone in, because the bone has all the flavor. So if you ever get a fish with steaks, with a steak in, with the bones in, it has a lot more flavor than fillet. I've watched it as the years pass. The younger generation, they want less bones, no bones, and now we're seeing the whole thing flip again. The younger generation are starting to go back to doing whole fish, not so much doing soups, but they're cooking whole fish. So that's kind of a neat circle that I've seen in my lifetime. It's amazing. If somebody gets a bone, they tell you right away, oh my God, I got that fish and had a bone in it. And I always say, it's a fish, it has bones. So it's kind of a hard thing to get them all. But, if anybody wants a little bit better flavored fish, definitely having a bone in it adds a lot more flavor. You get the juices out of the bone. So that's one thing to do. If you cook a whole fish, it's the same thing. You get everything in there, and it just keeps it nice and moist.
Can you show us a few examples of the different forms that you have?
Yeah. Well, all right. So here's whole fish. This is whole right and around. So these are black sea bass. So that's a whole fish. When it goes to fillets, these are fillets. These are the black sea bass fillets. So they're all flayed out, no bones. We leave the skin on because we really like the crispy skin. I don't have anything steaked, because right now we don't have any type of fish that people want steaked. But we will, like, we use striped bass a lot steaked. We do a few weak fish, but on the weekends only. During the week, it's mainly fillets only. So then depending on the season, we'll also butterfly them open and debone them. For people to stuff them. That's a lot of that happens around the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And how do you decide how many of each of the species that you stock? Do you have a quota that you follow, or is it by holiday preference?
It's by the season. Every season has different fish coming in, so it comes and goes with us. Some days we'll have a lot of fish in. Mainly it's weather. Weather makes the world of a difference for us. If we can't get out to get the fish, we're not going to have it here. We're so dependent. I can't just go to the local, farm that grows the chickens or something and say, hey, give me fish, because we don't have them right now out here. So, and I feel another thing is, most of my fish is wild, so you're not getting the antibiotics and all the bad stuff that's pesticides and all that stuff in them because they're wild, and that's huge. I mean, when you're trying to change your diet and stuff, you always want to go to something that's wild, preferably not farmed. There are some better options, a lot of organic farms coming into it, but it, you know, you can see wild fish is basically what I make my money on.
So can you kind of give us a tour, the process? So you receive fish. Can you share with us kind of the behind the scenes of fish market and how you handle those things?
Sure. Yeah, come on back here. Yep. So basically this is our receiving area. So basically, you know, most of the guys back up to our loading dock. We have a loading dock like everybody. Back up to the loading dock. Fish comes in, gets weighed right here on the scale. We log everything in. Everything gets logged. We in New York State, any fish that I buy has to get logged in. So and that has to go to the New York State DC and NIMS, so they keep track of it. And this is our cutting facility over here. As you can see, pretty decent sized cutting facility for us. Usually there's 4 of us cutting in the morning to get ready for the restaurants and for the fish market. We have also this side is our clam side, you know, where we do just, you know, the clams and stuff. But for the most part, this is the thing. We have coolers and freezers in there that everything comes in. Big ice bins. We have 2 different types of ice. We have a shaved ice and a cube ice. We technically use the shaved ice a lot more because it molds around the fish and gets the fish colder. Doesn't bruise the fish like cubes do. And then we have, you know, like our lobster tanks, same thing. You know, lobsters come in and go in and out. Basically, this is the whole facility as far as, you know, where we do. We do a lot of cutting, a lot of cutting and jiving back here all summer long. You know, people buy fish. We're scaling and gutting and cleaning and flaying. So it's a very productive area. You don't want to be standing over here because there's knives and scales and everything, fish guts everywhere.
And can you talk about some of the regulations and food handling processes that you follow, seeing it's a processing facility?
Well, yeah. Well, you know, we have to clean everything. You know, every night we clean everything down with bleach. You know, solution bleach. We got to be careful. We got to keep, you know, we got to keep different things, shields over glass. We got to shields over glass. We got to make sure there's no rust on knives. Make sure there's no, you know, we got to make sure to try to keep adulterates out of our processed stuff, whether it be like, you know, like even like fish scales can be considered an adulterate, say if we're opening clams. So, you know, so you don't want the scales falling into the clams. So we're very cautious about it. You know, glove handling, safety, not touching things with your bare hands. You know, cleanliness, that's another thing. You know, so we're constantly on top of all that, you know, and that's part of our guideline every day that we have to pay attention to.
And it looked like we had some action going on behind you. Was she cleaning some fish or?
No, they were just trying to get out of the picture. Everybody's hiding right now from you guys. But yeah, no, I mean, I can clean it. If you want to see some fish clean, I can definitely clean some fish for you or something. I mean, that's no big deal.
Jill and Jessica and Kat, are you open to seeing some butchery going on?
That's fine with me.
I mean, I'll
Got a thumbs up. We got 3 thumbs up, so
okay.
we're ready for the real deal, Charlie.
All right, yeah, I'll grab a couple I'll do a sea bass. I'll flay a fluke. Show you guys different ways of flaying. Maybe I'll do a porgy. So.
And what would be your preference of your go-to fish while we're?
One of my favorite fish are striped bass. I really love striped bass. So sea bass is my second, and fluke and porgy. So we're right in the right cycle. So it's good that we got the right things. So the key, we use different scalers for different different species. We use the heavier duty ones on the thicker scales, the smaller scaler on the smaller scales. I just gotta find my knife. Key to any of this is having a sharp knife. Sharp knife doesn't cut you. So when everybody says, oh, you know, you can direct the knife any which way you want to go when you're cutting a fish. But if it's dull, you're forcing it. That's when it pops out and it'll grab you. It'll bite you. So I'll just do it everything up here so you guys can see. So fluke, dark side, scale that. That's very simple. Fluke, very easy fish to clean. Sea bass, if that's a black sea bass, same thing. See, the scales go everywhere. So you can see how they can get into a lot of different things. But when it's a process inside of it over here, that's what happens. And this is what you guys are going to see cooked in a little bit is the black sea bass. And then this is a porgy. So porgies are a little bit tougher scale wise. They go everywhere.
Now, are all these fish caught at different depths or pretty much hanging
Yes.
in the same area?
Well, some of them are all in the same area. It depends on where I get them from. Most of them are like the fluke right now are from the draggers. Porgies and the sea bass are from the fish potters, or hook and line. So I can actually show you now. I'll show you right now, quick, the difference between. I can show you a steak. So what I'll do is see the fluke. The fluke, what a lot of people will do, you trim up the sides like this. Take that out, you get the guts out. There's a little bit of bloodline inside, you get that out. And then you can cut this right through like this. Depending on if you're grilling it or frying it, is the thickness you're gonna make it. So, see now that right there has the bone right in it. So it's all meat up here, all meat down here, and the bone's in it. All that bone, the juices will come out of the bone and add up into this meat. So that's one apparatus application to doing the fluke. Then when it comes to a porgy, either they cook them whole or they fillet them. So when you fillet them, it's the same thing. Just come down, and then you get around the bones there. Now, most people don't like porgies because they're loaded with bones, but they just have one extra line of fanning bones right here. And that's the difference with porgies. Porgies are a really sweet meat, excellent eating fish. You can bake them, you can fry them, you can grill them. Sea bass, you can fillet or do whole. Today we're going to cook it whole for you, but I'm going to show you how to fillet it out. Same thing. Cut right down the backside. And then they have the fanning bones also. And that's what I told you earlier about everybody wanting, there's a porgy, there you go. Everybody wants the bones out. So you got to end up picking the bones. And that way there's no bones in it. So no one can yell at me later on tonight. So that's 3 easy ways, 2 different ways to do that. Or you can grill them whole.
So I am noticing, with all the leftovers, is there anything that y'all do to process those, or are there?
Yes, 100%. A lot of the heads go into our stocks. So we take the heads, clean them out, gut them out, gill them out, and they go into making stock. A lot of restaurants also do that. And then also our lobstermen usually take a bunch of them for the lobster that they're doing around here. So, and then after that, we have a couple of the organic farm guys. They'll come and they'll take them, and then they mix them in with all the leaves and everything.
Do y'all have any questions? I noticed Jill's cat is very excited seeing the fish being trimmed up, checking out the fish. So do y'all have any questions for Charlie?
Yeah, I did too.
Go ahead, Kat.
Again. Okay, I'm unmuted. What do you do with your leftovers at the end of the day so you can do fresh fish? Do you freeze it and then ship it out to supermarkets, or do you just stockpile for the winter to eat it yourself?
No, well, I try to buy enough just for the day. I don't buy like overabundance. If I do, it goes into New York City. Usually we buy for a day or two, and then we try to move it between the restaurants and everybody. So I kind of I'm fortunate. I get so much fish out here that I can buy in every day. I can get fish, so that we're lucky that way out here. But if I do have an abundance, like say we catch a ton of something, I will push it into New York, into the New York markets. We do, there's different markets that we sell to in New York, so we will get it in there for the farmers markets, and then they can buy out of there. As far as the strap wise and stuff, most of that, I mean, whatever's left that we don't use will end up going into a landfill. But for the most part, 90% of it disappears and goes to whether it's the lobster guys or the organic farmers.
I think Jill had a
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, so you were mentioning that you make your own stock. So what do
Mhm.
you do with the stock? Is it something that you also sell there, or
Yes, yeah,
you have- yeah.
we always have stock here at the fish market. We make a very basic, simple stock. We clean the fish real good. We add salt, carrots, celery, and onion, and just reduce it down. We reduce it down for about 6 to 8 hours. So it's a big pot. Usually within 6 hours, 8 hours, it's half the pot. So we make a very, very thick stock
So
that
you-
you'll actually have to dilute later. Like most people, because we reduce it down so much, they'll add water to it.
So you use the Holy Trinity there. Coming
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Tennessee, that's a big thing in Louisiana. So, in the gumbos. Anybody else? Jessica, you have any questions? So, thinking about transporting and from the consumer side, what are ways that I, as a consumer, can transport? I might not have it on ice to get it home. So, what are some of the things that I could do to transport fish?
Uh, well, the key is ice. I don't care. Any fish should always be on ice. I don't care if you live a half hour away, an hour away. You always want to put fish on ice. Even in your refrigerator, most people don't realize refrigerators are 42 degrees. You want your fish to be kept at 36 or lower if you can. That gives it that much more of a lifespan on the fish. So always ask for ice. If your fish market or your fish guy can't give it to you, stop at 7-Eleven or something and pick up some ice. There's always little coolers. Everybody has the little tote bags nowadays. So always ask for ice. It's never going to hurt to have something on ice.
And what's the easiest way do you think us as consumers can get more seafood into our diet? I know it's, especially, personally myself, I come from more of a landlocked area, so that's not part of our diet. So what are things like we can think of to be able to get more seafood in our diet other than just, being creative?
Well, there's a lot of new guys that are shipping direct to housing, but just knowing your fishmonger, knowing where you get your fish, whether you buy it upstate and you're in a supermarket, just get to know the guy you're buying it from to make sure you get the best. That's the key. I mean, everybody knows me here and they know that they're going to get the best. I'm going to try to give them the best. So that's the key. Just knowing where you're getting it, your fish guy and having trust in him. You're only going to trust him once. If he gives you bad fish once and twice, you'll maybe give him a second try. Third time, you're not going to give him another try. So that's one big key about that. There is a lot of places online that are selling fish and they'll direct ship it to you. I know I've seen them more and more pop up. The guy from the tuna there, he's doing it. So you're seeing a lot more people do that. Kind of puts me a little bit at because I have a fish market, I have a store here, but it is what it is. Everybody can do what they got to do to make a living. So I mean, the key is though knowing your fish guy. That's definitely, and then sourcing it, finding out where where you can get, where you can get good stuff. That's the biggest thing.
So thinking about that, and that's a great point. What are some questions? I've gotten to know my local Charlie, and he's an awesome guy, and I trust in him. What are some of the things that I can ask my local fishmonger about getting quality, source seafood? What are some of those questions, things that I should look out for?
The key key to me, like if kind of like I always play stupid when I go into places, so I always kind of mess with the fish guys because they think I'm a consumer, but they don't realize how much I know. So I always ask them, oh, when was this caught? And then if they say yesterday, I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, here, yes, but like outside of Long Island, like not close to the water, no. But I always say, did you cut it or did it come in pre-cut? Is it previously frozen? Those are good questions to ask. And another thing too is, a lot of the guys might know the boat they're actually buying the fish from, whereas I do. I mean, I know just about every boat I buy my fish from, here on Long Island. And I do actually know a couple of boats up out of Boston and up in New Bedford that we get stuff out of. So it is, it's making friendship that way is definitely works, and then looking at it, you want a fish that looks really fresh looking, glossy. You don't want it to look dull and gray. You don't want to see any yellow. You don't want to see the bloodline look brown. You want it to be red. Just little things you could pick up on. If you touch the fish and your finger stays, there's a big divot. It should bounce right back up. So it's just there's little things like that make it a little bit easier for you guys to tell whether it's fresh or not. Looking at the eyes should always be like, kind of clear and not all gray and sunken in. Looking at the gills should be red. They shouldn't be gray and green. And just literally picking it up and smelling it. If the fish smells like fishy fish, it's not fresh. And that goes even with fillets. If you take a piece of fillet and smell it and it stinks, it's not fresh.
Kat had a question.
Have you met any famous chefs in New York City or anybody that you sell to? Do you have a good relationship with like some of the high-end restaurants down there?
I do. I've met a lot of them. I mean, Tom Colicchio's in here all the time, so I definitely he's always here buying for himself. I've Rick Mooney. I had David Bay. I've had tons of big chefs in here, and there's chefs that I don't even know who they are that come in here. Like famous people, and it's we try not. If anybody famous comes into my shop, my kids know we don't really try to. We try to stay away from them. They don't want to be bothered. We don't want to bother. Maybe if they're in here by themselves, we'll say, hey, I like your show or whatever. But if there's a group of people in here, all my kids know to say, not to say nothing, let them get their stuff and go. Because we always want them to come back. And that's the key. If they feel like they can't be, if they're getting bothered in here, they won't come back. So that we always push them, we kind of get them in and out as fast as we can. We know most of them, but there are a few that are younger guys that are coming up that we're starting to hear the names of them. And then, they'll come and say, hey, boom. And then we build a relationship so we know who they are and we get them in and out fast.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you left the boat. My understanding is you were a fisherman and you have now taken over a fish market. What was that transition? Do you miss being on the water?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, being on the water is like God. It's a God country out here with that. It's a lot of work, but you're not bothered. I kind of seen the changes with growing up. My father and grandfather both fishermen. The gentleman that I went to work for was a fisherman. So I saw how like regulations were kind of pushing them guys a little bit out, because when everything first started, when regulations really got heavy, was about 30 years ago. And that's kind of when I just got going in here. So I kind of got nervous growing up that I wouldn't be able to go fishing anymore. So I still hold all my licenses and I still go fishing as much as I can, but I'm stuck in here. I'm here more than I'm at my house. So do I love to go fishing? Yeah, I love it 100%. I'd do it tomorrow. If I could make as much money here and go fishing, that's what I would do. But this is what I chose to do. And, I personally, every day I thank God because I actually love what I do here. I love the public. I love being with people. I love telling people how to do things and showing people how to cut fish and clean fish. And so it's been actually a very good choice in my life career.
And where do you see the future for the seafood industry? What are you noticing? What are you forecasting? Is there storms
I don't know.
ahead or?
Yeah, I think we're going. I think everything's going in the right way now. Only because all fisheries right now have regulations on everything, so it's never too much. You can never catch too much. You can catch too much, but I think everybody's gotten more, so to speak, like conscious of how to catch without killing more. So I think everything over the last few years has gotten better. Guys don't want to go out there and catch fish that they got to push overboard. I mean, no fisherman wants to do that. So we're learning newer ways to catch smarter, and that's the key. And they're allowing a little bit larger regulations where they can go out once a week and catch their limit instead of have to go and catching, you know, 300 pounds every day. So that works that way well.
And what is the future of South Hold Fish Market? Do you have any kids that are going to be taking over, or they're going to
I'm
prop you
sure.
up with a peg leg there when you're?
You're gonna see me with the walker. That's what you're gonna see me waiting on customers or cutting fish. But yeah, no, there's some there's some kids that work for me that will eventually probably take over. Maybe my girls. I know I got two girls, but eventually, who knows? I mean, I don't see myself going anywhere anytime soon. Like I said, I love what I do, so why give it up if that's what you like to do? So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you so much for hosting us in the fillet demonstration.
yeah,
I'm sure if any of y'all are down on Long Island, he'd be more than happy to give you a tour and say hello and probably tell you about the freshest fish that he has. So thank you so
yeah,
much.
100%.
So
Thank you.
as we're transitioning, I want to take an opportunity to share with you some of the resources that we're going to be looking at that we have. So, how many of you have had an opportunity to engage on our website? All of y'all. So I want to just go ahead and share some of the things that we have coming up because I believe you all have probably seen our lesson matrix. And I'll just remind you that we do have our lesson matrix. So it's keyword search. If you do a keyword search for water and thinking about some of the fishing and things that we just learned about, you'll see that all the lessons come up about that we have about water, and these are fully developed lesson plans that are standard based, and they have plenty of resources. So today we're going to look at something later on water pollution that we will be pulling from our matrix. We also have some scholarships that are coming up, so definitely keep an eye out for our grants. We will have our Grow With Us and our Ag Literacy Grant back this year. So our Grow With Us has the Grow Towers and the Grow Systems. Our Ag Literacy Grant offers a grant up to $1,200 for you to create ag literacy experiences within your classroom. And that can be very broad as far as buying books for your classroom that are ag focused, to taking field trips, to starting gardens. That's a very broad grant for y'all to use. So we also have two professional developments coming up that I want to tell you about. And you can find those at our educator workshops. And we are going to have a professional development with Broome County at Trinity Valley. So if any of y'all are in the Cortland area, please feel free to join us. We'll be releasing that registration here probably in the next couple of days. It is in person, so it's going to be a day long. We will be making cheese and checking out a dairy farm and dairy processing. And then we also have one in Saratoga Springs. We'll be at Pitney Meadows looking at art and community gardens and school gardens. So if you're near the Saratoga Springs area, feel free to sign up for that. We'll also be releasing that here soon in the next couple of days. So anybody have any questions? Anything that I can share from our website? So I also want to share that we will have a few more virtual field trips coming up. We're looking at one in November, possibly with the Haudenosaunee, looking at the White Corn Project, and then we'll also have our Christmas tree virtual field trip before Christmas. So something to kind of mark on your calendar. You'll be able to find those here in our virtual field trip, and you'll see the marketing and registration. So we do have ours from this morning up here. And then finally, I want to share something to kind of think about over the next few years. We have partnered with the state the Grow New York competition, which is a statewide competition that's focused on increasing the agricultural footprints in our community or in our state. Thinking of ag innovation. So that challenge is every year, and it's a multi-million-dollar challenge. We have 2 years ago partnered with the Grow New York, and we are now bringing a youth challenge. So if you have some middle school, high school students who are creating agricultural entrepreneurial or have agricultural entrepreneurial ideas, have them fill out an application. They could be selected. We do in November 15th, 16th, when the competition and the challenge is held in Syracuse. And those students who are asked to be part of the finals come and pitch. It's a Shark Tank type pitch. We do have innovation, entrepreneurs from around the state come and judge those, and they're the same judges that judge the adults. And there's quite a bit of prize money, up to $2,000 for the top winner to apply towards their ag innovation. Last year we had twins from Wayne County who started building apple boxes and found a niche in building it and found that there was a need within the county. And so they were able to go ahead and continue their business and grow their business through their prize money. And many of the adults who are there to see these big companies and scientific innovations are flabbergasted by our students. We had a middle school student take second place last year with his farm market and maple business, and our fourth place was asked to join the Ag Venture that's part of Cornell, and got a Ag Venture mentor who helped him take his salsa and dips and dishes to the next level. So definitely something to think about if you're working with those students. You can find that again underneath our programs, and it will be our Grow New York competition. So anybody have any questions before we move on? Excellent. So we're going to jump back over. We are back in the market, and we are going to meet our representative from Suffolk CCE. Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Good. I'm Greg Rivara, aquaculture specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County here on Long Island.
And Greg, what do you do for Suffolk County? First off, you're on Long Island. You're near the ocean, so I'm sure it has to do with something with the sea. So,
Yeah, I primarily work with commercial shellfish farmers, helping them get permits and solve problems. I also work with all 10 towns in Suffolk County. They all have some sort of shellfish program. It could be a hatchery, or it could be purchasing seed from a commercial hatchery and just putting those baby clams and oysters out for the taxpayers to harvest. I've also worked in Nassau County with 3 towns there, and even into New York City, working with the city's DEP on projects in Jamaica Bay. So it's largely shellfish.
now, do you work with any of the shellfish restoration projects?
Yes. Yeah, we have quite a number of our own, but you may be familiar with the Billion Oyster Project. I work with them. I'm on one of their advisory committees. Also, Hudson River Foundation, I worked with them over the past, and we're doing our own projects from working with the Shinnecock Nation in Southampton, doing a really large scale restoration of their shoreline. That's about 5 years ago. My role in that was an oyster reef. And in fact, I'm looking at these oysters here, and these are the farmed oysters. You see, they're all single small oysters, and then the wild ones are more like in a cluster. And you could see they were attached to something here and a little baby on top. But these clusters are what we like for restoration and oyster reef building because they provide more habitat than these smaller single animals. They're all the same species, but how they're grown. And we can grow them like this in a hatchery or like that in a hatchery.
And can you tell us a little bit about restoration and restoration projects? What's the main focus? Why do we need to restore different ecosystems? What happened to the ecosystems to begin with for us to need to restore them?
Sure. The biggest problem was development. There's just too many people in the world, and certainly too many people on Long Island. If you've ever been on the Long Island Expressway, it's not called the longest parking lot in the world for nothing. So all those people have an impact on the environment around them. The other thing is everybody likes to eat shellfish, and I'm mainly talking about shellfish today. So it's something called overharvesting, and that's where the aquaculturists, the farmers, come in. It's hard to overharvest something that you're starting in a hatchery as a real farm. There's no overharvesting of milk, say, right, or corn. So similar with that. And I really don't like the word restoration. I know it's the R word. I prefer another R word, renovation, where we can't restore certain ecosystems back to where they were like before Europeans came to this country, but we can renovate it. We can make it better. And that's what I consider one of our roles at Cornell Extension. And why it's important is creating habitat for a lot of marine organisms. Filtering the water is another big factor. And I mean, we all depend on our marine ecosystem here for a lot of recreational activities. And that's where the money is. I mean, I work with shellfish farmers. It's a very small industry. Even in the United States, it's a small part of, the worldwide and United States shellfish farming industry. But things like sport fishing and boating, recreational boating, are big things. And you want to have nice waters, and you want to be able to harvest from those waters. And by helping these ecosystems come back and enhance them is helping that.
And can you tell us a little bit about bivalves, oysters, and what they do? What's so magical about bivalves and how they help to renovate ecosystems?
Yeah, I mean, they're bivalves because they have two shells, like a bicycle has two wheels. They're filter feeders. Clams live in the sediment. These are large chowder clams. So the clam would be like that, and the salmon would be about here. And there's two siphons like that, like straws that stick up. And one pulls in water. It goes into gills that filters out the phytoplankton, other small particles, and also oxygen, of course. And it gets rid of waste in the excurrent siphon. So there are two siphons, they're fused together. Oysters live on the surface, so they would just be, like that on the gravel or sand. And they don't really have siphons. They're asiphonate, but they still bring in water through one side of the shell and bring in the food, oxygen, and get rid of their waste materials like carbon dioxide and feces through the other side of the shell. So they're filter feeders, and they can filter quite a bit when the water temperature is warm. People talk about an oyster filtering 50 gallons a day. That might be true. That may be in the summertime with a really big oyster. It's not the case in the wintertime, and it's not the case with small oysters. So take that number with a grain of salt. But when you've got millions of oysters out there, wild and farmed, it can make a big difference. It can clear up the water so eelgrass grows better. It can actually crop down harmful algal cells so they don't bloom. So you can prevent the harmful algal bloom by having shellfish, whether they're farmed or wild. And I don't want to have a war between farmed and wild. I think there's room for both. There's not a lot of finfish farming on Long Island. It's mostly shellfish farming.
So thinking of filtering, How do we know that the shellfish we're eating is safe? If we're filtering toxins, do they filter um, biotoxins as well as chemical toxins?
So they filter what's in the water. If you're harvesting from certified areas, you're not harvesting toxins. There are none. We don't call it pollution. It's basically nitrogen based. So they're harvesting phytoplankton. Too much phytoplankton is bad because when they crash, they create anoxic conditions. They die, and then they need the bacteria that feed on these dead algal cells require oxygen. You get fish kills, things like that. So they're filtering, but they're not in toxic environments. If our DEC and FDA say they're safe to eat, then you're safe to eat them. So we don't say they're cleaning up the bays like pollution. What they're doing is they're taking out nitrogen. When they're harvested, they're taking out nitrogen, which is important because there's too much nitrogen going in.
Now,
And a lot of it's from rainfall, by the way. Rainfall from the west is a big part of our nitrogen load here on Long Island because the weather patterns move from west to east.
now, are there instances where bivalves are used to clean up polluted areas and harvested, or
No, there are projects. I know of one in Sweden, actually, where they use blue mussels. It was going to cost the city in Sweden a lot of money to upgrade a sewer plant. So what they did instead was they started a mussel farm, and the mussel farm was used as an extractive farm. And what they did is they ground up the mussels, shells and all, and made it into things like chicken feed and pet food. They were not used in human consumption because they were cooked. And that actually saved the city money over having built a bigger sewer plant. Here in New York, we do plant shellfish in closed waters. It's frowned upon for the most part by DEC because they don't want people harvesting them accidentally or on purpose because oysters are worth a lot of money. So at night, you can make thousands of dollars illegally harvesting shellfish. You're a criminal, but it's possible and it happens. It's not that, it's pretty rare. But what the DEC does let us do is plant, like I said earlier, these clusters that we grow. They may have 3 to 5 oysters in a cluster because you bring this to a restaurant. They don't really want to buy this. They want to buy this. The same animal, tastes probably the same, but you can't put that on a plate. If you break these apart, you're liable to kill one or more of them. So this DEC allows us to plant these, but not single oysters in these closed waters, places like Jamaica Bay. Most of the work we're doing is in certified waters, though, or at least seasonally certified waters, where in the fall and winter months, you can harvest from them.
so we are sitting with a bunch of teachers, and how can I get students into this line of work? What are pathways to direct students if they're interested in working on coastal renovation projects, CCE?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of schools. If you're in the middle of New York State, it's going to be more difficult. We can send you oysters and clams. They travel fine, the adults. The problem is feeding them with microalgae. There's no such thing as like a Purina clam shell. You can open a can or a box and pour it in the aquarium and feed the shellfish. But lower New York, Hudson and Long Island and in New York City, there's lots of programs that students can get involved. Citizen science type projects. The Billion Oyster Project is an amazing setup. Look into that if you're in the city or nearby. And then some of our other extension offices have programs. We run our SPAT program, which is the Suffolk Project and Aquaculture Training. My colleague, Kim Tetra, does that. And he's always got students working either through the schools or independently from the schools, things like science projects. So getting the kids out to the field, and it's a really great way to teach kids science where they don't even know they're learning science. Things like statistics. We're going to measure the shell height of these oysters, and we're going to do the mean. What's the mean and what's the standard deviation of those shell heights in a population? Those kind of things. We're going to count the number of oyster set on a shell that we're putting out into a reef, like the clusters I showed you earlier. Those kind of projects. It doesn't have to be like a super scientific project that's going to go to a Westinghouse program. It could just be working in the field, measuring growth and survival. What's eating our oysters that we're hanging off a dock in Brooklyn, for instance?
So for teachers, we can contact our local CCE, county reps, Sea Grant, any other pathways that you could direct us or
Yeah, yes, there are a couple of what I would call small ENGOs, these nonprofits that came out in the last 5 years or so. The oldest one that I'm working with three of them on Long Island. The Merchants Bay Project is one. The next one is Friends of Belport Bay, and these are pretty much on the south shore of Long Island. And the newest one that's furthest to the west is Save the Great South Bay. And all three of those involve students and have volunteer opportunities. Highly recommended groups.
Well, awesome. Anybody before we let him go? Any questions that you might have? We're gonna jump in and work with our chef here in a minute. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you could find me on the web, Greg Rivara. It's GJR3 at cornell.edu. I'm sorry, there's a question.
Oh, perfect. Hi, I'm Kat Reeder in upstate New York. And one thing we do for our chickens is oyster shells. And you mentioned that. Do you have local chicken farms down there that you'll actually grind them up for, since they're so good for poultry and farming?
Yeah, I actually purchased. I'm in a CSA, a chicken CSA, believe it or not, and I know the farmer very well, and he does get some oyster shell, but generally he grinds them up himself. I recycle oyster shell to put back in the water, and you can buy, as you know, from Agway oyster shell. It's already ground up.
Yeah, they're
So
like a great fertilizer as well, too. So
right. It's like a lime, basically, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly. So I don't think a lot of people, what I was trying to tell my class today was, because I have 6 different classes, how important it is not only for the environment, but also like how they're food, but they're also a good recycling nutrient for chickens and your soil science classes and stuff like that, because it's not just fishing or farming. There's a lot more you can do with them.
that's right. And people always want them for their driveways, which is a sin, but they do like it for driveways here.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you spending a little time with us this afternoon. We'll definitely share along your information, as well as the work that you're doing in Suffolk, and share links with our teachers. So we definitely want to thank you for your time. And as we're transitioning, if you want to take a quick break, if we could be back at 4:05, and then we'll jump in with our chef. So you need to take a quick bathroom break.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back to it. Can you hear me?
Go for Mike.
Hello?
Hello, this is Mike.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks.
Now, do you cook locally or do you
I
cook?
do. I cook at a restaurant called Portobello. We are a seasonal place, and we are about to close for the season. So when Charlie asked me to do this, I was excited to give it a shot.
Awesome. Well, so this is your this will be your demo for the Cooking Network.
Okay. I did send in a Top Chef about 20 years ago, but never heard from him.
Awesome. Well, we have some teachers, and they'll be brutally honest. So,
Good.
and I'm sure you'll get great marks. So, how long have you been cooking?
Oh, about 30 years.
And how'd you get into the culinary industry?
Basically, I was a senior in high school, and my guidance counselor came up to me and said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "Well, what do you do with your life?" And I said, "I work at a restaurant selling lobsters on the beach." And he's introduced me to a guy from Johnson and Wales University, and here I am.
Awesome. I love that. So we have our teachers coming back from a break, and it looks like we're all back on. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to focus on just taking seafood and thinking about spices and other types of things that how do we process seafood? How do we cook seafood? Those kind of tips. So I'll let you take it away, Mike. You're the professional.
All right, I'll just start with talking about what I'm going to do today, and then I'm going to start cooking the fish, and then you can jump in and ask me any questions you want. So out here on Long Island, we used to only be famous for two things, iced tea and corn. But now we have these beautiful things called black sea bass and scallops from Peconic Bay and oysters from all the great local farmers out here and the amazing farm stands. So we chose to do a whole fish today, which is not something people normally do. And this is a locally caught black sea bass. Charlie already had it scaled, cleaned, gutted for me, removed the dorsal fin, the tail fin, and the wing fins. And I'm just gonna mark it up, and I'm gonna inspect it a little bit, make sure he's nice, make sure his tongue is clean, his eyes are clean, his belly is clean, everything is nice and fresh. I'm gonna do a couple of light marks on it, just because when we cook it, the skin will toughen up, curl up on you, like the opposite of those spongy things that expands. It'll actually shrink before it relaxes. So we want to try and get a crispy skin on it, and just mark it a little bit so it cooks a little more evenly. Notice I didn't go too deep. I'm just kind of barely penetrating the skin because I want to keep the fish intact. If you overcut it, you can overcook the fish. It'll dry out. Not something you really want to have happen to you. So I'm just going to take some fresh parsley and put her inside. And I like to use fancy salts when cooking fish. So this is some Fleur de Sel. This is sea salt from France. I'm going to go in the cavity, in the head, a little bit of generous on the outside, a little bit of generous on the outside. And we're going to just let him sit for a minute while I crank up my pan here. And I'm going to start cooking this with a little bit of canola oil, which has a little bit of a higher smoking temp than olive oil, which I normally like to cook with. We're just going to get a little bit of a wisp of smoke on there. I can go down a little bit on the heat. And this is one of my favorite fishes to cook because it never gets any easier. It's always a challenge cooking a whole fish, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try and do it. First couple times, you might break it. It might fall apart a little bit on you, but that doesn't mean it's going to be delicious. Ugly food is delicious too, you know.
So, is there a reason why, other than there's a head on our food and we're not used to that anymore in American cuisine? Is there a reason why we don't cook the whole fish?
I'm going to say yes. Basically, Everything's a little too prim and proper for us nowadays. Everything is too cut and dry. There's a lot of people who will only eat chicken breast, for example. They'll never have, and those they will never be adventurous enough to try the whole fish. Cooking it this way, you're kind of honoring the animal, giving it a little bit more of a, because you'll notice the cheek, you're going to get meat out of the cheek. It's totally edible and delicious. A lot of people like to eat the eyes. I get a lot of foreigners when they come in and they order the whole fish. That comes back, it is clean as a bone. When I get typical Americans in for the whole fish, can you fillet it for me? Can you remove the head for me? And that's pretty typical too. And it's very unfortunate because you are doing a lot to make the fish a better consumable product just by doing this. Now he's going good a little bit there. You're gonna get a little shake, get that little shake. If you can get that little shake right away, you're gonna be good. The skin will not have broken yet, so it'll probably stay nice and crispy for us without like falling apart. Because like I said, this fish never gets any easier to cook, but it is fun to cook. So while that's going a little bit on there, I'm gonna just try and get that brown on one side. I will start one of the side dishes. I'm just gonna make a little bit of coconut rice. So what I did is I measured out. Now, a lot of people think rice is always 2-to-1. That's not always the case. This is jasmine rice. So this is more of a 1.5, 1 3/4 to 1. I'm gonna start that in a pan, just a little dry, maybe get a little toast on it, just to break out those nutty flavors that you come naturally in the rice. And I measured out here 1 3/4 of coconut milk. And that's with whatever container you're using. That's a good ratio for jasmine rice. Basmati rice, gonna go more 1 3/4. Sushi rice, 2-to-1. Uncle Ben's, 2-to-1. All right, we're just gonna add some coconut milk to that. And this is the easy way to do this at home. Now, what I want to do is keep it on high for just a minute, bring it up to a soft boil. While that's working, I'm going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and something I put in just about everything I touch is a red chili. It's not going to make it spicy, but it is going to give it a little bit of depth of flavor. How's Mr. Fishy? Still swishing around.
So,
all right, what I'm gonna
as you're
go ahead.
cooking the fish, what are you looking for to notice when you should turn it? I know from past experience and just cooking shows, they say that you don't want to flip it too soon. What are you looking for?
What I'm looking for on the fish is for the meat to start cook up on here. You know, you're going to start seeing a little bit of cooking there. I am looking way underneath to see how I'm browning in there. I'm on a 3/4 heat. At the restaurant, I would do this at a high heat pretty much all the time. I'm going a little bit slower because I want a little bit of a nicer result. But yeah, basically you're just, you're gonna look for it to start cooking on the other side, but not necessarily from the top down. I'm about to flip it, and yeah, you don't want to flip it twice. It's definitely something you don't want to do. Because once you start flipping it back and forth, that's when this fish starts to fall apart and starts to break up. I know I got a perfect flip when I can grab him by the head, and he just picks up and comes nice in like that. Got some good color on there. And we're just going to let him go a little bit on this side.
So you said that was a sea bass. I know many of us are inland New York. Is there a comparable freshwater fish or farm fish that we could get to that sea bass?
Oh, I would definitely try this with like some freshwater trout. I've even had like fresh, like big mouth bass. You could certainly do that. And on all these techniques I'm using right here, it would work pretty well for a piece of salmon as well. although I might not keep it on the other side for too long. That's one of the fishes I like to eat a little bit more rare. So I got this rice up. I'm gonna put a cover on it and drop that temperature down as low as I can go. Now all rice will cook in about 20 minutes. But this rice, I'm gonna wanna, at 10 minutes along, I'm gonna wanna stir it, because sometimes jasmine rice needs to balance out a little bit in the pot. And then I'll let it go for another 10 minutes. This fish is looking good. Now, normally what I do with this fish at this point is I want to get the internal temperature up. You can see I'm a little hot on the outside. I'm going to be hot on the inside, but I want to get the internal temperature. So I'm going to put it in the oven about 450 for about 10 minutes. I'll just let that go in there. Now that's going good. Now that's going good. Now what else can we make for you guys?
So I do have a question. Thinking about seafood dishes as a chef, how do you come up with seafood dishes? What are there do's and don'ts? Are there essentials that you would put with seafood?
Usually with seafood, I like to keep it as simple and use as few ingredients as possible. That is definitely one of the rules I go by. Like, even if I'm gonna do a fish and chips and fry it in the fryer, I am literally gonna put one nice type of flour on that fish. I'm gonna use clean canola fry oil, and that's it. It doesn't need more. That's one of the things about fish that I find great is it doesn't need much at all. It really, really doesn't, especially if it's quality fish. Your fresh fish that I get here from Southold Fish Market. It's like, sometimes I call Charlie up and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I say, just bring me what's fresh. Swordfish shows up. Okay, what am I gonna do with swordfish? We'll see, we'll figure something out. It's really not a big deal. As long as you keep it simple and fresh, you really can't make a mistake.
So are there some don'ts for seafood? Thinking of even
Oh, that's a
shellfish.
good question. I wish I had really thought about that ahead of time. Shellfish, well, biggest don't with fish is always, if you can, don't overcook it. Any types of fish, that's something that you're going to encounter sometimes that you really, really don't. Other don'ts is, just trying to make sure you use the right types of ingredients to go with it, meaning, using a high temp oil if you're frying a high temp fish, using an olive oil if you're doing something cold or something low, maybe doing something just simple. Kiss it, keep it simple, stupid. Pardon that. That's one thing I like to try and do.
In thinking of seafood and how does that compare to other proteins? Thinking nutritionally.
Well, one of the great things about seafood is it has much better proteins in it. It has way less bad fats and fatty acids. And I'm not 100% sure on the terminology anymore. I used to be, but I know that seafood does have much better types of cholesterol than other meats. Also, most of the meat you're getting in the supermarket nowadays, it's got hormones in it. Whether it's farm raised or naturally raised, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be loaded with chemicals. They're feeding stuff to animals that animals normally wouldn't be fed. So using locally, these fish eat fish. So it really doesn't get any better than that.
And what are some of the food safety things that you think about in your kitchen that you follow when you're preparing fish? We've noticed you wiped your hands and cleaned your hands a few times. What are some of the things that you need to think about to keep that fish fresh?
Well, one thing that I do is I try to maintain temperature. Like when I get my fish from Charlie, it's always iced down. So I try to maintain it being iced down, even though in the refrigerator, it's going to keep it at a proper temperature. just having that little bit of extra chill always makes it a different. I also have a meat box where I do all my butchering in, so I can butcher 40 pounds of fish without taking it out into an 80-degree kitchen, and it never changes temperature. That's one of my favorite things about it.
Now, I noticed you've been sauteing something behind you. What do you have?
All right, so I got just a little bit of zucchini and jalapeno. This is how I first started doing the whole fish on the menu, and this is just a little combination of soy sauce, grapefruit vinegar, lemon and lime juice, pretty much equal parts of each. And I call that ponzu. So I'm just making a little bit of a vegetable ponzu to go with the fish. And that is like a super light crisp. I like serving vinegars with fish because it brings out the natural flavors and it also keeps it clean. And it always smells and tastes clean to me that way. I'm gonna check on my fish in the oven now. She's got a little smoke to her. Oh, that's beautiful. Now I'm looking inside the cavity. I can see right here that this spinal cord to the head is pretty much at the color I want it to be. At home, you would want to probably double check yourself, maybe use the thermometer, get it to 155 to 165, safe to eat. Sometimes on fish like these, you'll notice there's going to be a little pink or a little blood. That's not necessarily always a bad thing, but just be wary sometimes. I am going to make this fish different than I normally would. Yeah, I'm smoking them out now because I'm cooking vinegar and fish. It's getting a little hot. I'm gonna do this one a little bit of an Italian style. Add a little bit of butter to it. I've got these nice capers. And I've got a few caper berries here as well. One of my favorite ingredients. Just gonna turn this one into a little bit of a saucy guy. A little bit of white wine. Nice little sizzle. All right, I apologize. I will add butter to everything all the time. So this is good to go. I like to finish with some fresh juice. Orange is nice and subtle, and it cooks down so it doesn't get too bitter like lemon or lime would. All right, that absorbed the color of that pretty nicely.
And I know that you can't see us on this side, but I have to admit that I am now very hungry, and it looks like our teachers are all now very hungry. So it all looks delicious.
I appreciate that.
And Jill and Jessica, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or Carrie.
Yeah, go right ahead. Base this guy a little bit with the flavors I got going on.
So what exactly are caperberries?
So a caperberry the capers grow inside the berries. So it's basically the immature plant before it goes to flower and you harvest the berries out of it.
And what kind of flavor could you compare that to a flavor, or is it just unique? Or
yeah, it's kind of like a regular caper on the outside, and then inside you got this like nutty sweetness going on. It's kind of like almost like a walnutty kind of flavor, and you can see like those will eventually all be berries one day, and they are delicious.
And Jill, I think that's a question.
I love them too because they have a nice crunch, like that vegetable fresh crunch to it. All right.
Go ahead, Jill.
So yeah, I want to say, thank you for showing us that, because I've taught food nutrition and only once have I ever attempted to go the fish route. And I think it was because I let the students pick out their recipe, and every group picked up something definitely more complicated than what you did.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it was a disaster.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, fish dishes can get overly complicated, but like even the tuna dish I have on the menu, it literally is 5 ingredients. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. I grill tuna. I serve it with some of this coconut sticky rice that I'm about to put on the plate for this piece of fish here, which will go nicely with the sauce. And this is a 2 ingredient thing. It's literally coconut, milk, and rice. This is very few ingredients in here. I like to hit this one with a little bit of cilantro because that brings out the flavors a lot, and the soy. So we're gonna do one like this. We're gonna do one with this a little bit of an Asian flair, and then we'll do one more. And I like to put the vegetables under the fish because they just like everything blends together nicely. Because that's one of the things I love about these is they can blend really well. So this guy, we're gonna do the slippery slidey technique because we want the sauce. Well, no, on this one. Oh, look at that. And we're just gonna pour all that right over it. And that's gonna be good. Well, yeah, that's gonna be good. And that's gonna be like a little brown buttery, nutty, and savory. And that one I'm going to finish with some fresh lemon. I got one I set up a little bit earlier too. Show you how simple it is. This guy is a little bit stuck in the pan. You can sometimes release that by adding a little bit of fat. And letting it rest. He's a little stuck to the pan. That's all right. You can add a little fat. It'll come out. Definitely more enjoyable to cook these in a non-stick or a well-seasoned pan. Put that guy on there. And that's going to have a little bit of an Asian to it. Okay. And this one, cut a lemon like Charlie Trotter, get like virtually no seed. And that'll go over this one. Leave it. And a little bit of the soy glaze over this one. And there's my 2 whole fish dishes for the day.
So before we dive into this fish, because I'm definitely going to have to pull somebody from behind you to give them a try.
Oh, no. I want them. Please.
But can you tell us a little bit about the culinary arts? You're speaking to teachers. What's some advice directing students into the culinary arts from your experience as a chef? Things that we can do to possibly reach out to kids to get into the industry.
Well, it's not without its challenges like any other industry, but it's definitely one of those things that you can really have one of those jobs where you can go to work every day and not work a single day in your life. You enjoy what you do. You enjoy the people you work with. You enjoy the materials you work with, the relationships you build. But if I were to give any advice to any people who are even young and considering the business, find a specific area which you like, whether it's food, wine, fish marketing. People could make a lot of money and be very successful in the culinary industry if they figure out the niche that they would like to go with for the rest of their lives. A lot of people in my career, they like work the front of the house, they work the back of the house, they do lots of things, and then career never really takes off. To be a success at what you want to do, which is ultimately the goal, find a niche and lock into it. Whether it's teaching, whether it's cooking in restaurants, which is me, which is the one I won't recommend, but it's definitely an exciting, fun business. You got a lot of fun people. I have a lot of friends who I went to culinary school with who are excuse me, wine purchasers, wine growers, food and beverage directors for strings of hotels. There's a lot of different areas you can go. You could wear a suit, you could wear a chef coat, you could wear, I know a guy who's a very successful butcher out west, and he loves what he does. So there's an endless stream of possibilities that you could do in this business. Just got to find the one that fits you.
And as a teacher, how might we direct our students to try to start to find those niches?
Go to work now. Get a job as a busboy now. You know, if you're not overly active in after school sports, maybe you're not a social person. I know I wasn't. I started working in a luncheonette when I was 12, stuffing newspapers, cleaning floors, and delivering toast to people. At 13, I was a busboy in a restaurant, and I knew that this was an exciting, fun business. I was also doing pretty well, making money doing it. So, and I know a lot of restaurants will, just even as a summer job, just get started early. That's definitely my best advice for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. We're gonna have to pass that headset to. Let's pass it to Caitlin and see if we can get somebody else to grab the
Yeah.
camera, and we're gonna have her feedback. We're gonna have her try your dishes and share what she experiences, because you always have to try that dish.
All right. Well, this was a pleasure, and thanks for letting me participate.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for being with us today.
Okay. Bye.
So this is Caitlin McFadden. She's one of our newest members. She works down in New York City. And Caitlin, you're going to have to try these dishes and give us that taste test and tell us what you're experiencing. So, you got to grab a fork somewhere. And
They're going to get it for me right now.
so, what does it smell like while you're there? What are you experiencing?
So it does not smell fishy at all. It smells very delightful, to say the least. So you all tell me, what do you want me to go into first?
The lemon. Give me a thumbs up if you want the lemon. Thumbs up if you want the Asian. I think they want the Asian one first with the zucchini. So the back one.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that looks so good.
Yes, please do. Go from here. Okay.
Kind of scrape.
Got you. Okay.
And I haven't never seen more dainty fork skills. What are you
Pretty good.
experiencing? What are
It's
you,
pretty good.
you tasting the soy and
I will say it's very juicy. It's very meaty. The taste is very delightful. I can't complain. And if I wasn't on camera, I would be stuffing my face right now. And I'll try the veggies and the rice along with it too. Pretty good too.
so you're telling us you need to get off camera pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, I wish you all were here to try it. However, I'm sending my taste buds through the camera so that you can experience it as well. But really good meal and a virtual round of applause for our chef.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin. We're going to jump into our next lesson, and Jill and Jessica and Carrie and Caitlin definitely continue to enjoy that fish. We'll pick y'all back up here with Emma and Michael here in a little bit. But we're going to look at our lesson that we're going to jump into today. So we did send you some packages, and were y'all able to get those packages? I know we had some issues with them getting to you with our delivery. Were you able to get those? Jessica, do you have yours yet?
Oh, hold on.
Jill?
I got a box,
Okay.
but I didn't know if it went with the virtual field trip
Yep.
because it was like it was bags of the oyster shells and the sand and the net.
Yep. And Jill, were you able to get yours as well? Perfect. So if y'all want to
Yes.
go ahead and break those open, we're going to take a look at those right now. And we're going to think about how we can take everything we experienced and apply it into the classroom. And then Carrie, if you're there also, were you able to get your box today? So you can go ahead and pull those open. And we're going to take a look at some of the items that we got in. So this is an experience that we can use within the classroom to kind of incorporate everything that we had today and think of those ecosystem standards that we meet in so many of our grade levels. So let me jump over to my webcam. So one of the things that you will notice is that you should have gotten some water beads. And
That one.
I don't know if it will focus on this, but I will hold these up. So if you can look and see, you'll see some beads, you'll see some small green ones, and you'll also see some larger ones. So one of the things that we can do with these water beads is we can think about the clams, especially those small green ones. When we start our starter clams, we talked to Greg about they call it renovation, not restoration. The renovation, many of the clams start at this size. So as you start to add them, I did put some in the water as soon as we got started, and you can see how they've grown. So what we can do is we can start these in a cup. I had a clear one, and you can see the water's kind of shining. What I did is I added some food coloring, and y'all should have some food coloring to act as that algae bloom or that algae. And thinking of the bivalves within an ecosystem, that's a great way to start to think about how those bivalves are filtering. Now, these over 30 hours should grow. One of the things that I know Michael likes to do with Sea Grant is he likes to start in a small container and then continue to add different size containers as they grow, because that's a great way to advertise or to discuss the fact that we have that growth. So they mirror kind of what happens in nature. Now we also have some laundry detergent. You should have some spray oil. Food coloring. And then we included some sand. You got some cheesecloth, and you also have some coffee filters. So one of the things we want to think about when we're engaging with this lesson is what happens to our ecosystem. So as we start to have, we can add water to our bed, and we can think about this as a clean lake. I'm here in the Adirondacks. If y'all did not know, the Hudson River starts not too far from me. So we can think about this as one of these beautiful, clean Adirondack alpine ponds or lakes. So we have traveled up to the Adirondacks, and we're enjoying our time together. And as we start to travel down, we can start to add. We'll add a little bit of washout as we're traveling down 87, following the Hudson down to New York City. We might have I have some potting soil that I might add. I did ask, we can add some garbage as well, but we can have some washout where we're having some erosion along the shore. And maybe we have some flooding. So now we have some tree mass that's entered into the water. So what are some of the things that might happen as we start to hit Albany in those areas? What are some of the things that we can see happening to that pristine water? What'd you say, Jill?
It's cloudier, darker.
It gets cloudier or dark. And why is that?
It's all the sediment and garbage.
So we start to have sediment and garbage. So we can definitely add some garbage to the mix. Now we have that in the Hudson River from our beautiful alpine pond that we had in Adirondacks. And what happens as we start, one of the biggest pollutants that we have a great water curriculum that we're developing, thinking about the benefits of ag land compared to developed lands. And what starts to happen as we start to get blacktop? We start to have highways. What do we start to notice entering into our water systems? Pollution. So I have some cooking oil, and you can notice that starting to sit on top of the water. And now we're noticing what happened. And we sent you two bins, and what's great is we can have that first for comparison, and we can start to thinking of the difference of what this looked like. And how many of us do laundry? We have some Tide Pods. And what happens as we do laundry? We're looking at some scientific chemical reactions happening, pushing that oil away from that laundry detergent. But now, what has our alpine water started to look like? We start to get down towards New York City, and we have some industrial things happening, and what might happen from the industrial sites. So we start to have chemicals enter into our water systems. And so now we're down in New York City after flowing a few hundred miles down from the Adirondacks. And let's take a look at what's happened to our waterways. And we're thinking about ecosystems, and we're thinking about sea fish and shellfish. We can go ahead and dump some of our oysters in there. And if we take a look at what happens to the oysters, and you notice the blue has started to absorb many of those chemicals. So we think about the industry, and we think about agriculture, and Michael and Charlie, I think Greg mentioned that there are certain approved waterways that they can fish from. Now, one of the challenges I like to throw out is, how do we clean this up? And to get your students to start to think about, what are the first steps that we have in restoration? So thinking about our chemical and our different types of reactions, what's the first thing we can do, the simplest form? And we included some supplies in there for you to do this with your students.
Trying to filter the water, just skimming off the top.
So our first thing we can do is we can just use some physical. So we can have our students start to try to physically remove that pollution. You can see I'm doing okay, but there's quite a lot of pollution there still left over. So our next step, and you hit the nail right on the head, Jill, is we can start to think about filtering it. So what is something that we can develop? And this is the innovation challenge that I want to throw out to you. I did ask you to bring a couple of bottles, If you weren't able to do that, that's fine. But we did include some cheesecloth, and you'll want to set this aside for your students. Coffee filter. You have a bag of sand,
Mm.
and you should have a bottle. So what is something that we could design using these supplies to help us start to filter that water?
You can make like some type of filter that's like it's on a fish tank, where it can go pass through the sand and get the finer pieces, the coarser pieces, and then also then through the filter paper.
Let's see if I can get it to zoom in a little better. And so what I like to do in the classroom is I like to put the supplies out there. Let's see if I can remove it from this black. I like to give them a challenge, and I like to give them an innovation challenge. So I like to put the supplies out there, and what would be the challenge that we would stipulate the objective of our students? What would be our objective?
The objective would be to try to clean up the water.
To try to clean up the water, and so their task would be to use the supplies that they were provided to be able to create something to clean up the water. So thinking of the different levels, I'm gonna jump back because this camera is not focusing, and I apologize about that. There we go. That's much better. So use these supplies to be able to create a filter. And what I love is to have as many different ideas out there. We go through a process of trial and error. So the filter that I started to create, and I think Jessica, you kind of hit the nail right on the head, is I put the coffee filter inside with a sand medium. When I think of this filter, what could happen? Thinking of filtering out that water, what could happen with the way that it's created right now that I could maybe add another step to this? Thinking of the different particles and size particles.
Like having the cheesecloth on top so it filters out the bigger particles before it goes in there.
Yep, so I can create a 3-stage filter where I could have that cheesecloth on top to take out the heavy particles. And then we have the sand to start to try to take out the chemical in the soap. And then I have the coffee filter that could start to filter out some of the smaller particles in dirt and erosion. So the other thing we can think about is the bivalves, thinking about them as part of that ecosystem. I know Greg mentioned that they can be used as part of restoration, and we do see that they are holding chemicals and heavy metals. So that is something else that we can discuss, is that these bivalves will start to hold some of that. So any questions so far? You can see this bivalve is definitely growing. It's definitely is a conversation that we can definitely have with our students to think about our impact on the waterways. And if you're looking for that lesson with all the supplies, if you look within our matrix, we have it as the water pollution demonstration. And I will definitely be sending you that link here in a follow-up email. And one of the things to think about is one of the major forms of pollution, especially within things like the Hudson River, myself growing up on the Mississippi, is our soil, rocks, and things like that are one of our biggest sources of pollution that are polluting our waterways. So pulling that nitrogen with that wash off and erosion. So with that, if y'all don't have any questions, we're going to jump back over to Caitlin. And we're going to talk with Emma and Michael about Sea Grant, have them introduce who they are, what they do, and how to connect with them. So Caitlin, are you there? Oh, Michael's there. Awesome.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I need to turn that off. Just leave the meeting. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Saramella. I'm the Seafood Safety and Technology Specialist with New York Sea Grant and Cornell Cooperative Extension. I work with the seafood industry. Throughout New York and Long Island, primarily working on seafood safety, nutrition, sustainability. Do a lot of outreach and education, primarily connecting industry with the academics and the research that's happening in the different institutions throughout New York as well as throughout the country. Basically trying to ensure that research that is done is applied and applicable at the industry level. Emma is our aquaculture specialist. Emma works with our aquaculture industry, fish farmers throughout the state, oyster farmers, which is our biggest industry here in New York and across Long Island. And we're here as a resource, both for the industry, but also educators. So we do work with educators and students from time to time. We do have other programs that work directly with students and educators on different topics, such as coastal erosion, coastal processes, environmental conservation, and conservation. We have curricula online and a variety of resources, but I encourage you to reach out to ourselves as well as our colleagues in county cooperative extension agencies who do a lot of other research and a lot of other outreach and education on environmental topics. Sea Grant, we really focus on the marine and coastal districts, so anything to do with water is really our area of expertise and what we work on. Do you want to?
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Forbes, and I am New York Sea Grant's aquaculture specialist. So as Mike said, I work with farmers throughout the state. So that includes both fish farmers, shellfish farmers, and hopefully soon seaweed farmers.
So Emma, if somebody wants to get a hold of y'all or engage with Sea Grant, say a teacher wants to dive into some more of the resources about the seafood industry, or have somebody talk to their students about engaging with what you do, how can teachers connect with you or Sea Grant? So
they can visit our website, which is nyseagrant.org. And then if for seafood, you can do /seafood. For aquaculture, you can do /aquaculture. Both of those web pages will have Mike and I's contact information, as well as the curriculums that he mentioned, seafood guides, and other resources that we have that are available.
And what are some of the things that
Mike's going to put our emails in the chat.
Yeah, well, I will definitely share those out in a follow-up email.
Okay.
And what are some of the things that you see in the future as far as a industry that is needed from teachers and students?
What do I see in the future for the industry that's needed from teachers and students?
What are things that we can start to educate our students about?
I think the biggest thing that the industry needs right now is just an education that it exists and actual impacts. There's a lot of, for lack of a better word, propaganda that goes around. I'm sure you all saw Seaspiracy or heard about it. You've seen Patagonia's Run of the Wild, which is their push for wild salmon versus aquacultured salmon. And there are obviously cons to everything, but there also are a lot of benefits. What students need and what the industry needs is an education on what it is, what it actually does, and impacts to it, both good and bad.
Awesome. So, do y'all have any questions of Emma or Mike? Well, we definitely want to thank you all for joining us, Emma and Michael, Caitlin. We are very grateful for being there, and thank Charlie and Mike and everybody and Greg for their time. So, what you should be receiving in the next few days will be an email, and I'll have many of the links to the lessons. And it will also have an evaluation. So you need those CTLE credits. You need to fill out that evaluation. That second page is going to ask for some information from you, some personal information that we need to process that with the state. It would be the same information that you provide to your school for your CTLE credits. And so when you send those back to us within a few weeks, we are able to process those CTLEs and send you those certificates. The certificates can also be used if you need it for any of the bonus from your district and your administration wants those. It should be a certificate that you're able to use with your administration that you attended our professional development. So again, thank you so much for joining us as teachers. We hope that you're able to join us in one of our in-person or future virtual field trips. And we want to thank Michael and everybody on the ground there in Long Island for your time. So you all have a wonderful evening. And if you don't have any questions, feel free to go ahead and leave. And have a great rest of your school year. So thank you for all you do as educators.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Great job, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I think it went well. Unfortunately, the supplies were not there in time for us to get deeper, but I think Michael and Charlie did a great job. Susanna did awesome this morning. Emma was a great filmographer. So we're going to steal you from Sea Grant to New York Ag in the classroom. And then we'll have two of you. And it looks like y'all are enjoying that fish. So how delicious.
Yes.
I'm so jealous.
Jeremiah, I'm killing you for putting me on the spot.
For what?
I'm killing you for putting me on the spot.
Please do. You'll get some student loan and a mortgage. That's what you'll get. So awesome. What did Susanna think this morning?
I think she enjoyed it.
She was,
I think she was happy.
She thought it went well.
Yeah, everybody's nervous, when it first kicks off, but it goes very quick. It's a lot of fun to be on the ground and do these things because you get to see behind the doors and, just have a good time hanging out. So she did an awesome job. I think Charlie did an awesome job. What a great personality. Mike did an awesome job. So Greg did an awesome job. Y'all did an awesome job. So all around, great job.
You killed it. You had the questions coming all day.
That's what we do. We try. This is the first virtual PD we have done since last February. So I'm a little rusty. So I have to go and flog myself and evaluate myself as Katie would want. And feel horrible about the job I did and then go be better, right? That's what our bosses always want. But so we had about 2,000 students this morning, maybe a little over. I think we probably had about around 2,400,
Wow.
y'all had an impact on 2,400 students, and many of them got seashells and oyster nets. So when you think about any of the numbers, reporting for grants and things like that, definitely put that in your impact. It's always a benefit we lost some when she started talking about fertilization. So I think we had a few kindergarten classes drop out, but that's okay. It's natural. It is what it is.
I figured that was where we kind of lost people.
Yeah, no, but I think we dropped one or two classes, and that's okay. It happens. We had probably 150 questions in the queue from students. So that means they really engaged.
Yeah. And would you follow up? Do you want us to try and answer some of those that didn't get answered live?
I'll have to see if I have those, if it recorded those in the Zoom. Usually we don't follow up on the virtual field trips. We follow up on the PD. Unfortunately, tonight's PD wasn't super well attended. And I don't know why that is. We've had some burnout, I think, lately from COVID. So usually we have no problem filling our virtual PDs. And it's something that we've noticed over the summer, but y'all did a great job, and I'm very jealous, Caitlin, that I'm not there. Because I was looking forward to being there and eating that fish. Bass is my favorite, and I was drooling the whole time he was making that. I was like, no, but I'm glad hopefully you had a great time, Caitlin. And here in the future, if y'all want to ever, partner and do something else, we can look at Ontario and other parts of the state or other concepts. So, Mike, we talked about developing that curriculum a little more. That's something else we can think about. So definitely reach out. Great job all around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great evening, and I'll let you eat my fish.
Oh.
Bye now.
Bye, Jeremiah.